have a confession. I'm an engineer who became a mindset coach. You might be thinking, okay, Janae, I already know that. But this is what you might not know. For a long time, I thought that these two sides of me were at war. That there was the part of me that wanted data and systems and the measurable results. And then there was a separate part that knew business growth isn't just about strategy. It also has to be about capacity, about how well you can regulate your nervous system and the ability to actually hold something bigger. And what if they weren't at war? What if the most powerful business methodology I could build was one that actually honored both?
Welcome to the Savvy Founder Podcast, where vision meets strategy. Get ready to unlock the power of mindset and entrepreneurship and demystify the art of systemizing your business for success. I'm your host, Janae Reed, an engineer turned master mindset coach and systems expert. Are you ready to transform your business and mindset? Then let's dive in and make your vision a reality right here on the Savvy Founder Podcast.
Today, I'm telling you the story of how I stopped trying to choose between the engineer and the coach, and how that led to the most sustainable, scalable business model I've ever seen. And at the end, I'm going to tell you how you can build it with me. So a little bit of background about me is before I ever entered the online coaching, mentoring space, I worked as a chemical engineer. And the way of thinking is definitely based around precisions, systematically thinking, logic based, and really knowing your metrics, knowing your data, making decisions based on the data that you're seeing. And so a lot of the way that problems or different issues were approached and how they were solved is really to reverse engineer. Okay, I know what the desired outcome is. I know where I want to be. I know that I have these certain variables that I can change, that I can optimize based on the data, that I can continue to read the data to be able to always optimize going forward. And I remember when I first started building my business, I had that same engineering brain with me, but I didn't really use it as like the forward facing, this is my primary way of thinking of business. I knew that I didn't want to just show up on social media and hope that it worked. I needed to actually know, okay, what's the measurement? How do I know if I'm actually making progress? And one of the ahas I had when I did start to actually put that engineering mindset on the front burner was that I quickly realized that daily reels, constantly being your story, chasing engagement, it wasn't actually converting. The metrics just don't lie. They didn't lie. And honestly, the likes and comments just weren't paying my bills. The semi-viral videos that did take off, they weren't building my email list. And so I started to think to myself, what is actually going to grow my business and what's actually driving traffic, what actually gets opt-ins, what actually makes sales. And that was when I really started leaning back into search-based platforms, which another side story is long ago, what feels like long ago now, I actually was an exchange student and I had my own travel blog. So I knew a lot about blogging. I knew about Pinterest. I knew about YouTube because I used to have an account from way back then when the primary way of communicating your experience was actually through forums before a lot of it was social media based. But now I feel like I'm talking like one of those back in my day people. Anyways, my whole point of this is really I was going back to search-based platforms. So thinking about Pinterest, how can I show up in Google? How can I be found on YouTube? And how am I able to use that strategically? Because even today, a lot of times I hear people talk about search-based things such as Google or Pinterest, and it feels like it's this, oh yeah, it used to be an SEO focus. But to be honest, if you are currently using AI in your business, or you would like to have clients find you through AI and let the AI platform of their choosing know, hey, this is what I'm going through, who do you recommend I go to? And AI also can give recommendations to your ideal audience based on how you're showing up in search, but that's all very search based, and not every platform that you create content on is actually going to feed that. So depending on where you are currently showing up, where you're currently being active, you may completely have this lack of findability essentially when it comes to even AI. So just want to add that in there. But essentially, the data was clear that when you are creating something for the long haul, which tends to be what all search things are, you're able to drive traffic for a very long time compared to just your typical social media platform. And so when you start talking about the ROI on your time investment, it starts to be so. My engineering brain was thinking about this, and I kept going back to the fact that, okay, if the method that I'm using doesn't match the desired outcome, then I'm just working in hard mode for no reason. I'm literally just choosing to make something more difficult than it has to be. And why should I do this? This is where the capacity side started to kick in, because initially when I was first learning about, okay, how do you actually set up your online business? How do you get all of these things up and running? I was so heavily focused on strategy. I wanted to know all the things I didn't know. But I quickly started to realize that I was at a plateau just relying on how much I could do, how many hours I could squeeze in, which really led me to dive more into nervous system work, into breath work, because originally my segue into breath work was actually more through yoga. I used to be a yoga teacher, and I just had this pull to learn more about how is my mind working, because I started to realize, oh wow, I can have this entire list of things to do, yet there's something that's causing resistance. And that led into a lot of the nervous system work, the deep subconscious mind work, and even eventually into HRV biofeedback, but that came years later. And so the realization that I'm really trying to share with you is that I quickly realized that strategy alone isn't enough, that you have to have the ability to actually be able to hold the business that you're building. And I think sometimes when people say that, it sounds very abstract. I think a good way of recognizing if this is something that you're experiencing is if you are using a strategy that feels like it's supportive of your lifestyle, that it is matches your values that you have, that it is a way that you would actually like to conduct your business, yet you're still being faced with resistance and fears that might be actually showing up as logic. That's a really good sign that it's actually something a little bit deeper that's actually going on. So when I started implementing all the right strategies, and the way that I'm defining the right strategies is these are the strategies that matched my lifestyle, that matched the way that I wanted to show up in business, that matched my long-term vision that I have for my business, what it looks like, what my life is going to look like. I started leaning into Pinterest and getting that working, and using retargeting ads that started to convert. And I realized that I could still keep hitting the ceiling even if the strategy was right, because the strategy wasn't the actual bottleneck, it was me. And so my nervous system couldn't hold up to the level of growth that I was striving forward because it was maxed out. And so this is where the soft work is really critical, where the mindset shifts. And honestly, I think mindset to me is such a tricky conversation, because I know a lot of people who know mindset. They can tell you the facts. They can tell you how the subconscious works. They can tell you how to reprogram beliefs, but there is such a gap when it comes to the embodiment of it, where if you start talking to them about an area that they are having issues in their business, you can see all of the lack essentially of embodiment show up. And so to me, this is not about knowing, I know how mindset works, I've read the books. I honestly, if you've read the books or not read the books, to me, it's completely irrelevant. It's like, how are you actually able to deal with issues as they come up? What is your natural way of solving it, of not solving it? How do you see the issue? How do you actually approach it when it comes up and it's in your face? I started to focus more on the embodiment of the mindset, the embodiment of nervous system regulation. And that's when the overlap, I think, between the engineering mindset and the embodiment or the soft work, if you want to call it that, really started to come into play, because I didn't want to just feel better. I didn't want to just believe I could. I wanted the measurable results. So I actually started using HRV biofeedback to track my nervous system in real time. And if you're wondering what that is, literally, if you have any smartwatch or smart jewelry, it's actually tracking this. It's a really good indicator of what's going on, of how your body's responding to everyday stressors, of how you are literally able to adapt to your environment. And I started to really test different modalities to see what worked the best for me. And that's when things started to click. I think that's when everything started to click. The most powerful business model isn't one that just ignores your humanity in favor of optimization. It has to be the one that honors your humanity as a part of optimization. And I think that's a really key distinction to make, is that you do need systems at work, even when you are not at your 100%, because who is at their 100% all the time? You need a business that doesn't punish you for being human, whether your body is going through ebbs and flows, or you have a family and a life. It's really important to have a strategy that can create space for your nervous system to actually regulate, that you're not always in this state of fight or flight, that you can hold the vision you're building towards, that you can have a business that is built for the person who's running it, not the ideal perfect version of you that never gets tired, that never needs a break, that never has to choose between showing up online and showing up for her family. And this is what I built, is the methodology that really is combining that data-driven side with the nervous system aware side, that really bridges the strategic and sustainable, that is results focused, but also, I hate to say this because I feel like it's so cliche, but human-centered. Because to me, the way that you do this is you have to have systems that match your life. Most business advice assumes that you have an unlimited amount of time, of energy, of availability. But the fact is that for most people in my audience, you're a mom, you are busy, you have real life demands, and your business needs to fit into your life. It can't consume your every moment, which is why the goal is to build content that lasts for a longer amount of time, because that gives you longevity. Because when you have systems that run while you're living, that is something that is so valuable that you really can't get if everything you're doing only lasts for a short period of time. So for me, the way that looked is Pinterest was the answer, to be honest, because instead of me spending hours every single week to create the content I needed, I can take a few hours every month and have it set up. And so the input, the energy, the time input, it's a lot lower, but the length of time that it's able to last is so much higher. The second part of this is having metrics that you are tracking. And the automatic thought that I think comes to most people's head is vanity metrics. But what the heck is vanity metrics? It's your likes, it's the comments, it's the followers. It makes you feel like you've been productive, but it's not actually moving the needle on your business. But what I'm talking about when I say tracking metrics is the real metrics that let you know what's going on. So how many outbound clicks are you getting? How is your email list growing? How are you making sales? So this is the engineer side speaking, where it's you have to measure what really matters to keep your business growing and thriving. And it's really important that you optimize based on the data you're seeing, and you know how to optimize based on the data you're seeing, and that you cut out what's not working. There's no reason, there's no pride or reward for you choosing to continue doing something that you can visibly see it's not working. And last but definitely not least is to actually have the capacity that can support your strategy, because you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you are living with a nervous system that is very dysregulated, it's going to be very challenging to implement it. And I've seen this over and over, where people will go into programs and this is the answer, but it doesn't really matter what program they go into, the results are subpar because they just can't support it on a body, human, biological level, which is why it's really important to really do that nervous system work, the mindset shifts, to actually build in the capacity that you can implement the process, not just on the weeks that go well, where everything goes to plan, where life just feels easier, but that you can do over a long period of time, because the goal is having a business that can sustain you over a period of time, not one that only works when life is optimal. So this isn't the you have strategy or mindset. This is about having them work together. About a year ago, I was actually working with a private client where we were setting up all of her automated systems for her business. So think funnels, email automations, backend CRM management, tagging, pipelines, working out how she was launching, creating a way to launch that was very sustainable for her as a one-woman show. And that was a very strategy-based container overall. But I realized that between one of the calls that we had, she came back and I was like, how did it go? Because she was writing some emails so that we can automate it. And she was just like, I was not able to write a single word. And I remember that this led to this conversation around the nervous system side of things. And we literally spent a session only focusing on her nervous system, which at the time was not really what we had planned to do. And I remember after the session, I feel like, I don't know if anyone else has this experience, but sometimes you wonder like, okay, I think this was the right thing, but you don't always know that immediately. And I remember the next time I talked to her, she was telling me about how much more she was able to do and how grateful she was that we were able to do that, and I was able to facilitate that safe space for her to actually move forward, because she was talking about how this is something she has gotten stuck on for so long. It had literally been years that she hadn't been able to fully implement a system in her business. And it was something that we were able to just work through together. But that's the power of the nervous system. And sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's, you do need that system, you do need that structure, but can you also recognize when there's something else going on, so that if that is the barrier, we can just work through that and keep going forward. So all that to say that, what is the methodology? The methodology is to have systems that match your life, and that's going to be very unique to every person. I have some clients that don't have a presence on Instagram at all. Some are present on Instagram. It's about what matches their life and what they enjoy, and having those things align. It's about having the ability to track the metrics that really do matter and that are actually going to be able to move the needle on your business, and also making sure that you always are building the capacity up to match the strategy that you're using. And so this is where, for me, the engineer and the coach work together. And that's literally what I have built inside of Audience Growth Engine. Because for years, I've only shared this with one-to-one clients about how do we take this approach of data-driven strategy and nervous system aware implementation. And to me, this is where there's the hugest gap for women, especially mothers who are building businesses right now, is that how do they bridge that gap? Which is why I'm opening this up as a group program for the first time ever, where we're going to be diving into the Pinterest strategy. How do you set up your retargeting? How do you apply SEO and use the data-driven systems to do that? But then also accounting for the human who's running behind it, and how to do the implementation and have the accountability, where this isn't the I need to go and consume just the strategy, but you're actually getting that tangible execution set up in your business. And if you're wondering, hey, is this for me? This is really for moms who are tired of business models that require them to sacrifice their presence. Really, this is designed for coaches and course creators, service providers who want to have sustainable growth, who are in their business for the long haul. And if you just know that you've been told to work harder, but you know that actually you need a different system, this round is really unique, because my intention is to be very accessible for this group of people. The investment is the lowest that it will ever be, and really to be in their businesses with them to help shape this program to make radical shifts for all of the women who are in it and those that will be in it in future rounds. So if you've been looking for a business model that really honors both sides, the strategy, but also the human, then this is it. You don't have to choose between having the data-driven results and having sustainable business practices. You can literally have both, and that's what we're building together. The waitlist is currently open, and I will include the link in the show notes, and you'll be getting first access to, honestly, a program that I wish I had at the beginning, but I'm so excited to share this with the women that will be joining. So all that to say, if you've been feeling like there's been this back and forth inside of you where is it systems? Is it the human mindset side? I honestly can't wait to help you build this for yourself. Thank you so much for being here, for listening to the podcast. I can't wait to see you on the next episode or see you inside of Audience Growth Engine.